Hi, I'm Hobie1. Out at the flying field today, we are reading the House on the Cliff, Hardy Boys book number 2 by Franklin W. Dixon. Chapter 15, Dire Straits, Glasses. Check. Let's go. Snatman, once he had recovered from his first consternation and surprise at finding the Hardy Boys in the underground room, was in high good humor. He turned to his men. Just in time, he gloated, rubbing his hands together in satisfaction. If we hadn't come here when we did, they'd have all escaped. The Hardy Boys were silent, sick with despair. They had been sure they were going to succeed in rescuing their father, and now the three of them were prisoners of the smuggling gang. "What are we going to do with these guys?" asked one of the men. The voice sounded familiar to the Hardy Boys, and they looked up. They were not surprised to see that the man was the red-haired one they had met at the Pollitt place when Frank had discovered his father's cap. "Do with them?" Snatman mused. "That's a problem. We've got 3 on our hands now instead of 1. Best thing is to leave them all here and lock the door. And put gags in their traps," suggested a burly companion. Red objected. "As long as the Hardys are around here, they're dangerous. They almost got away this time." "Well, what do you suggest?" "We ought to do what I wanted to do with the old man in the first place," Red declared, doggedly. "You mean get rid of them?" Snatman asked, thoughtfully. "Sure, all of them." "Well," Snatman gazed at Mr. Hardy with a sinister look. "I should think you have enough on your conscience already, Snatman," the detective exclaimed. "I don't expect you to let me go," he added bitterly, "but release my boys. They haven't done anything but try to rescue their father. You do the same thing yourself." "Oh, yeah?" Snatman sneered. "Don't bother yourself about my conscience. Nobody but nobody ever stands in my way. As to letting these boys go, what kind of a fool do you take me for?" Snatman shouted. "If you 3 are such buddies, you ought to enjoy starving together." The smuggler laughed uproariously at what he considered a very funny remark. Frank and Joe's minds were racing with ideas. One thing stood out clearly. Snatman had said that the Hardys almost escaped. This meant that no one was guarding the secret entrance. If we can only hold out a while, they thought, the Coast Guard will arrive. There'll be nobody to stop them from coming up here. Then, suddenly, a shocking possibility occurred to the boys. Suppose the Coast Guard could not find the camouflage door opening from the pond. During the conversation, 4 of the smugglers had been whispering among themselves in the corridor. One of them now stepped into the room and faced Snatman. "I'd like a word with you, Chief," he began. "What is it now?" The smuggler's voice was surly. "It's about what's to be done with the Hardys. Now that we've got 'em," the man said hesitantly, "it's your business what you do to people who make it tough for you when you're on your own, but not in our gang. We're in this for our take out of the smuggling, and we won't stand for too much rough stuff." "That's right," one of the other men spoke up. "Is that so?" Snatman's upper lip curled. "You guys are getting awful righteous all of a sudden, aren't you? Look out or I'll dump the lot of you." "Oh, no, you won't," replied the first man who had addressed him. "We're partners in this deal, and we're going to have our full share of what comes in. We ain't risking our lives for love, you know. We've got another idea about what to do with these 3 prisoners," a third smuggler spoke up. "I think it's a good one." "What is it?" Snatman asked impatiently. "We've been talking about Ali Singh." Frank and Joe started and listened intently. "What about him?" Snatman prodded his assistant. "Turn the prisoners over to him. He's got a friend named Foster who's captain of a boat sailing to the Far East tonight. Put the Hardys on board that ship," the first smuggler urged. Snatman looked thoughtful. "I hadn't thought of Ali Singh. Yes, he'd take care of them. They'd never get back here," he smiled grimly. "From what he told me about that friend of his, the captain had probably dumped the Hardys overboard before they got very far out," the man went on smugly. "Seems like he don't feed passengers if he can get rid of them. All the better, we wouldn't be responsible. Leave them to Ali Singh." Red chuckled evilly. "He'll attend to them." Snatman walked over to the cot and looked down at Mr. Hardy. "It's too bad your boys had to come barging in here," he said. "Now the 3 of you will have to take a little ocean voyage." He laughed. "You'll never get to the Coast Guard to tell your story." The detective was silent. He knew further attempts at persuasion would be useless. "Well," said Snatman, "haven't you anything to say?" "Nothing. Do as you wish with me, but let the boys go." "We'll stick with you, Dad," said Frank quickly. "Of course," Joe added. "You sure will," Snatman declared. I'm not going to let one of you have the chance of getting back to Bayport with your story." The ringleader of the smugglers stood in the center of the room for a while, contemplating his captives with a bitter smile. Then he turned suddenly on his heel. "Well, they're safe enough," he told Red. "We have that business with Burke to take care of. Come on, men, load Burke's truck. If any policemen come along and find it in the lane, we'll be done for." If this is interesting to you, please boop the like button. You'll help the video spread to other people. Thank you very much. "How about them?" asked Red, motioning to the Hardys. "Shouldn't they be guarded?" "They're tied up," Snapman gave a short laugh. "But I guess we better leave one guard. Anyway, Malloy, you stay here and keep watch." Malloy, a surly, truculent fellow in overalls, a ragged sweater, nodded and sat down on a box near the door. This arrangement seemed to satisfy Snapman. After warning Malloy not to fall asleep on the job and to see to it that the prisoners did not escape, he left the room. He was followed by Red and the other smugglers. A heavy silence fell over the room after the departure of the men. Malloy crouched gloomily on the box, gazing blankly at the floor. The butt of a revolver projected from his hip pocket. Frank strained against the ropes that bound him to the chair, but the smugglers had done their task well. He could scarcely budge. "We'll never get out of this," he told himself ruefully. Joe was usually optimistic, but this time his spirits failed him. "We're in a tough spot," he thought. "It looks as if we'll all be on that ship by morning." To lighten their spirits, the Hardys began to talk, hoping against hope to distract the guard and perhaps overpower him. "Shut up, you guys," Malloy growled. "Quit your talking, or I'll make it hot for you." He tapped his revolver suggestively. After that, a melancholy silence fell among the prisoners. All were downhearted. It looked as if their fate truly were sealed. That's the end of Chapter 15. Thank you for joining me. Catch me again for Chapter 16.